Welcome to the Shameless Plug, a podcast about climate, energy, and most of all, about electrification. It's a new podcast hosted by me, Saul Griffith, and my mate, Fiona Whitelaw, and we're going to get to the nuts and bolts of electrifying your life. In today's episode, we're going to talk about finance. You're going to ask, what does finance have to do with electrification? And I've always said that the energy transition we're going through is a shift from fuels to finance. We used to buy cheap machines, spend expensive fuels putting in them. Now we're going to buy slightly more expensive machines that have really cheap fuels, but because they're more expensive up front, this is a problem that needs to be solved with finance. So we're going to talk to one of the original gangsters of green and electrification finance in Australia, Katherine McConnell, the CEO and founder of Brighte. Today, I'm really excited to bring on a good friend, Katherine McConnell. She is an expert in how we finance climate solutions. I'm an engineer and I love talking to engineers and thinking about the engineering of all the solutions all day, but I've really come to appreciate that finance is unbelievably critical. And because so many of the things that we need to solve climate change, like our electric vehicles, the electrification of our homes, requires finance, I'm actually really excited to talk to Katherine not only about her perspective on finance, but what she knows about how people think about finance in the context of this. So welcome to the show, Katherine McConnell.
Thank you so much, Saul. Great to see you again. Lovely to meet you, Fiona.
Katherine, can you just tell me a little bit about what you do just to let's get the ball rolling?
Okay, well, I'm coming up 10 years this year, actually, so I'm due for some long service leave at the end of the year. But 10 years ago, I started a business called Brighte, and the key thing that we do is make sustainable energy equipment affordable and accessible for households across Australia. And how I got into this was because I had a background working in banking, finance, worked in government for a bit, and also personally got some solar and got some batteries and realised how essential financing was in these purchases. So really excited to dig into these details with you a bit today.
So then let's maybe back up 10 years. So what's the origin story of you starting? What led up to you thinking about and then having the confidence to start a company in financing climate solutions?
Well, Saul, it was two things. It was really a mix of a personal situation that was happening at home and then a career combination of my skills and experience. And so those two things collided. But what happened was my career, I'd been spending it in asset finance. So for about 14 years, for the last 12 years of that, I actually got into energy finance, energy equipment finance. So I was creating finance solutions for solar installers who were selling energy efficient equipment and solar to small businesses. And then I was able to get into household energy finance and create products for households back in 2010 that were looking at buying solar for their home. So I was able to do this from inside of a bank and see, the complexities of how you set up these products, the regulations, how you create funding structures for them, how you distribute them. And but on the personal side, what happened in 2010 was we actually got solar at home, started saving a heap of money. Got some more solar because we thought the savings were so great, got some more in 2012. And then in 2015, we were actually one of the first customers in Australia to get a household battery, a new generation household battery. So Tesla Powerwall 1 had not arrived. So we got the first edition of the LG Chem. We were the first installation in New South Wales. And we were the first VPP that was signed up in New South Wales. And we were the first trial pilot in 2015. So I actually started making a lot of money as the demonstration customer with them tapping my battery and feeding it into the grid. And what I did was I got this taste of batteries. I just felt, solar was going to create savings.
It tastes a bit like blood, I've experienced when they
Teaspoons.
Highly acidic. So, and I kind of saw that batteries weren't right yet. Early adopter. thing, but I got this glimpse of the future, and I just felt so strongly that in about 5 years, my vision was 2020 batteries. There was going to be huge adoption and huge value for the purchases of batteries. But I also saw that the cost was going to be high, that people would need finance to be able to access. And that was where I started, dreaming about how I could combine my experience in finance and make it easier for people to buy batteries when the boom started.
So in that role, you're not selling directly to households, or you are selling directly to households?
So the thing that I identified, when I set up at the bank I was working at, I created a commercial financing product. And through that, I developed relationships personally with about 300 solar installers around the country. And so what I heard from them was the biggest barrier in people purchasing solar back in 2012, 2015 was having solar finance at the point of sale that was available for them to help close that sale, for them to remove the friction of the purchase. And so what I identified was that these tradies, these solar energy professionals, they were going to be battery retailers, were essential, and they needed to be equipped with the tools to make that sale easy. And so the product that I actually developed enabled the energy equipment retailers to be equipped with financing products that they could distribute at the point of sale and they could use to help customers access, finance for solar and battery. So we distribute our products effectively through the tradies who sell the energy equipment.
So this is instantly interesting to me. One thing, just, you started in asset financing. So you've already said 3 or 4 things that I'm writing on my hand here. So I'm going to follow up on these things. Very, yeah. You see, we're totally professionals here at the Shameless Plug. I've been known to make the analogy that the things that are going in our homes are now infrastructure. And, when I think of asset financing, that sounds like a term you'd read in the Financial Review about infrastructure. But you're actually using the same term, assets, as regards the assets in people's homes.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, say a little bit more. So you kind of see this the same way, I guess, in sort of infrastructure.
I do. And this was probably the insight that I had. I felt that there was going to be an infrastructure swap out. So I felt that what was going to happen was we were effectively going to go through a transition that wasn't a clean energy transition. It was a transition we were going to swap out all of the equipment that was using expensive fuels, fossil fuels, and it was going to swap them out with equipment that was going to use energy that was generated by the sun. And it was not only going to generate, it was going to store, and then the equipment was going to be powered by that energy. And so, in banking, it's asset finance. At the bigger end of town, they call those assets infrastructure. And it depends on where you're playing and who owns, it gets technical, but who owns the asset. But asset, equipment, infrastructure, that's exactly what's being financed.
And then the other thing that you just made me think about, and you can see how quickly we go off script here, is that you talk about the tradies trying to close the sale. And the reason my ears prick up at that, and we can return to normal programming in a second, but I do think this is super important. It is the tradie who is in the home closing the sale on a whole bunch of the things that we're going to do in this energy transition, whether it's your water heater, the solar, the battery, the car charger, even the kitchen countertop, and the home heating system itself. It's the tradie who's going to close the deal. And I'm really interested in how culturally we make the heroes out of these tradies. They're the people who are going to build our new infrastructure and get the job done and solve climate change. So what's your journey with the tradies and making them heroes?
So, Saul, that's the whole genesis of our business. Effectively, what we want to do is reduce the time, the effort, and the risk it takes for one of these tradies to close a sale and get paid specifically for the purchase of energy equipment. when they're selling energy equipment. So they're taking on so much risk, in the equipment, in the pricing. They're taking on risk from the customer's purchase. What if they drop out at the last minute and they've ordered equipment? They're working with subcontractors, electricians and salespeople. Like, these are tradies that we're pulling into a huge, this generational, so you call it, this generational change that's happening. And we're pulling them in as our frontline emergency workers. And we're just expecting they have all the tools of trade, And so what Brighte's doing, and what the whole genesis of Brighte was I recognized that they don't have the tools of trade. A lot of people don't trust them with the tools that they need, but they need those tools if we want them to be the front line of the transition. And so that's what we're trying to preempt and predict what their tools are, and try and equip them.
And by tools, you mean some of those tools, you mean financial tools?
Yeah, so we've moved on to a few different things, actually. So primarily it's financial tools for their customer, but we're also now providing them, we've got some new products around financial tools for their own business, around working capital. And then we also are providing them with things like leads. So so we've got a big partnership that we're doing with the biggest bank in the country. So we're helping their customers be connected to accredited tradies. And then we also work with government programs. So we're able to be the partner for government. We can do the accreditation of the tradies and give them access on their phone to government programs, loans and subsidies. So it's on many fronts trying to equip them so they can have everything they need to convert that sale and help that customer support the transition.
You're so right about people. It's a lot of money for a lot of people, and then I can fully see how tradies would be on the hook, essentially. These are huge kind of purchases and there's a lot of risk. Do you know how many people put solar infrastructure, worth maybe $1,000 or more in their homes just by paying for it in cash versus people who use some form of finance? Is there any?
Yeah, Fiona, there's no really good statistic. So when solar's installed, you're eligible to create a small-scale technology certificate, an STC. And so the government publishes information on the creation of these STCs. And so we back out that data to be able to look at how we think we're going and others in the market. We think maybe 30% might use cash, maybe up to 50%. It depends on the purchase price.
Like how big it is.
I mean, at the moment, and we'll probably go into this, but the government launched a battery subsidy 1.5 months ago, and that has seen the uptake of batteries just phenomenal. And we're seeing average purchase price post the subsidy at around $20,000, whereas previously we were seeing that at around $7,000 to $9,000. This is the price of a small secondhand car, and everyone primarily finances their car. And so this is definitely finance territory. And it's also, we can dig into it, but it's also moved mass market. We're not just at early adopters anymore that have a spare $20,000 sitting around. This is the 4 million Australians that have solar. A lot of them are mums and dads, and they don't have that cash lying around, but they want to take advantage of a government 30% subsidy. So they need help up front to help get this equipment today. So it's hard to get the stats, but finance is becoming increasingly common.
So we will have some American visitors, and they're going to be jealous that we have such cheap solar and our government is now helping us get batteries. But I think it was a very cleverly designed government program, so maybe to explain it a bit to them. The STC, sometimes also known as the SRES, was a program to give a subsidy that's pretty big in the first year when the solar technology was expensive, and it gets smaller and smaller every year. That's actually going to phase out by 2030. It succeeded overwhelmingly. It went from making a technology that was more expensive than the incumbent to something that's way cheaper. And now the Australian government, just in the last election, only a few months ago, proposed to do the same thing for 1 million batteries on Australian households. That's 10% of Australian households. My understanding is 200,000 of those million are already out the door, and we're only a couple of months in.
30,000. 30,000
Wow.
homes. 30,000 homes in 6 weeks have got batteries, and we have 250,000 homes with batteries today. And in 6 weeks, we've seen 30,000 houses install a battery, and batteries are about 20 kilowatt hours plus is what we're seeing. So it's not even like a 10 kilowatt hour. It's a bigger size battery. 2 to 3 power walls, for example, we're on average seeing.
Wow. So people are really going all in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you're saying, I just need to repeat that. So people are buying 2 to 3 power walls per household.
Absolutely. The government rebate applies up to 50 kilowatt hours of battery at a site. So we're seeing houses definitely get 2 to 3. Some are going right up to the 50 kilowatt hour max and getting this one-off 30%. Effectively, the intent is to subsidise 30% of the cost of a battery. But if people are getting cheaper batteries, it actually provides a greater contribution.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. I'm writing that down. That's amazing.
So I actually think this is good government policy. I know you have a love-hate relationship with government. Maybe I shouldn't even say that, but I think we all would like government to be efficient. I think this is based on a program that was good, that brought the cost down of solar, helped get us our tradies trained, and I think they're trying to do the same thing with the batteries. And it's certainly going to help us avoid some of the problems of the transition as we retire coal, for example. So this appears to me to be good. I'm hoping that the government does similar programs for the rest of the kit, whether it's the car charger, the stove, etc. But I'm interested in how you score this out of 10 on a well-designed government program.
9 out of 10, Saul, for the government battery policy. So I think one would be aspect of it is the impact on the supply chain. And so I think they tried as much as they could to give as much information as they could, as quickly as they could, to make sure that there was no impact on the tradies. The announcement was made a couple of months before the election date. So if they won, this was going to be put into effect. And so what that does is effectively it stops everyone buying. And then it creates backlogs, on the day if you get into power. And so they really tried to work through that, preempt that, and work with industry. So I was really impressed with how they did that and how they're doing it on an ongoing basis. The second thing is I am a really big believer that it's the government's responsibility to provide grid reliability and grid security to us as a country. And, we've got a lot of coal generation and aging assets coming off over the next 10 to 15 years. And so I believe that the government will be subsidising participants to make sure that we have secure energy. And I actually think that households should be top of that list. Households should be recipients of government funds. I truly don't believe as a banker that it should be given to the banks and private equity and companies overseas. And I think households are on their knees with high energy bills primarily because we have a lot of different entities, private entities that have high costs of capital owning generation assets. And I just think, well, why can't households own their own generation?
This is music to my ears. I wasn't quite expecting that answer. I love that answer.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to hear this because I have said this out loud maybe too many times trying to start a revolution, but it strikes me that it's odd that by the rules of the electricity market and the utility monopolies that we grant, that we're giving guaranteed 10% plus equity returns to the big end of town for their asset investments, but we're not guaranteeing the investments of the punter in their solar and their battery and their car and their stove.
And more, Saul, I actually see that it's a generational opportunity to shift power to the home. And this power generation, like power of fairness and choice and control. And I think that's what we're actually faced with this energy transition. Like Australians have a choice of who they want to own their power generation. And I am really proud that outright we've made the decision to back households, and households are rewarding that trust that's been placed in them by government by just saying we're going to pay 70% of the cost of this asset. Yes, you chip in 30%, I'll chip in 70%, and we're going to help us as a country get there in this transition. And I think that's what's so exciting, because governments come to the table, households have come to the table, and we're saying we're going to take up this choice to make the ownership and generation composition look very different in the future.
So it's actually a public-private partnership, to use a neoliberal term, but actually the public in this case is the real public, and that's going to be a better deal.
100%. And I think people say, some people may say it's government funding, it's subsidy, it's middle-class welfare. They talk about, subsidies to households for solar. Households are chipping in 70% of the cost. It's not 99% that's being funded, 70% of the cost, and all of the asset risk and the servicing risk and the installation risk, over time, they're taking on a lot of risk. So I think it is, it's fair what's happening. And I think it is going to have bigger uptake than what anyone imagined. And I think the million households, we've got 4 million households with solar. There's no way that only 25% of them are going to get a battery. Like half of them, 3/4 of them are going to want a battery.
Is it a limited program, or can we just keep doing it?
Well, that's what I think is interesting, because they've said about 1 million households, and I think that there's a CER, a Consumer Energy Resources Roadmap, that's been put in place last year, and state government, federal government have agreed to this roadmap. And I think they actually anticipated under that 1 million households would get batteries by 2030. So I think that's where the funding allocation was there to match the CER roadmap. Can they allocate extra funding? I think that comes down to a political choice. It comes down to a reallocation of...
Well, there'll be another election in 2028, so double dip.
That's really just to kind of hammer more of what you're saying about that, or maybe to reinforce what you're saying about having the money shifted to households. And if people are sort of criticising or saying this is middle-class welfare, but that takes the focus away from what you're saying is previously that money is literally going to, companies that have got a much higher cost of capital. They are passing that cost on, which is driving inflation. So I guess what I really would like, if possible, for you to maybe restate that even more so, because that's a very tantalizing point. And I guess what I'm trying to do is make sure that we really get that opened up, because that's a good one.
And I think the thing is, I'm not saying that our energy assets have been subsidised right now. What I'm saying is that I think it's 70% of generation will be aged by 2040. And so what we are seeing is the owners of those assets are having to keep those assets on, and they're being supplemented to keep those assets on and operating longer, because the backup hasn't arrived, the cavalry hasn't arrived, And so, yes, I understand they're being paid money, but the choice that we have as a country is we have to bring more generation on sooner, and that generation, I think, will be subsidised because of grid reliability and security. So I think the decision is government will subsidise. They'll have to, because of the predicament that we're in, and they are, by extending and making additional payments to generation owners that are ageing. And so I just think it's who should that go to?
Better to give money to a mum and dad for a battery than to an aging coal plant is the fundamental argument.
Yeah, and how much can they firm effectively? People may say it's only 10, 20%, of Australia's generation they can firm. Well, Saul, you're the numbers man. If people are getting 50 kilowatt hour batteries at their home, not 10 kilowatt hour batteries, how much can they firm?
Well, today the average Australian household uses 14 kilowatt hours a day. So that would mean you can firm 3 days worth. And I think the real concern of the grid is not firming for 3 days, but it's firming for the 3 hours in the evening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if that triples, which it will when we electrify the vehicles and the rest of the house, it'll probably go up to 40 kilowatt hours a day. But then, that's a battery that can bring a high energy household to basically, guarantee that it's running 100% renewably.
And that's what the surprise is. I think at Brighte, we thought households would get 1, maybe 2, but the fact they're getting 2 to 5 the fact they're getting from 20 to 50 kilowatt hours, that's what's really interesting. That I wasn't expecting to see.
Yeah, I was shocked by that.
Maybe to shift focus a little bit, let's go down how do you think about finance? How do punters think about finance? I know personally, I just never really learned to take on debt. I was so poor from my entire teenage years, 20s, that I always scrimped and saved until I could buy the thing, which makes me weird. I'm sure, Fiona, you think about it differently again. No,
I think I'm pretty much in the same camp.
The purchase that we're talking about, it's a few grand for a water heater. It's 10, 5 to 30 grand, depending upon the size of battery. It's 10 grand for the solar. It's 30 to 80 or 90 grand for an electric vehicle. These are the significant purchases in people's lives. So can you walk us through maybe some archetypes of how people think about finance?
So I just looked up a statistic, and it was saying 3 in 4 households hold debt. And so in Australia, and just some of the stats, about 40% hold a credit card, about 30% hold a home loan, about 22% hold a buy now, pay later account.
Wow.
About 17% hold a personal loan. So the buy now, pay later is more common than the personal loan. And I mean, at Brighte, we have a personal loan and a buy now, pay later. And it's about 90% choose to use the buy now, pay later, about 10, sometimes it gets to 20% choose to use the personal loan.
So, Katherine, we're trying to think about how normal people, everyday people, think about the finance and the costs. And you were talking to us about payback periods and the various where people can put these loans on the house and in the other places. So, speak to that.
So I think you've got the option of using your home loan. If you've got available redraw capacity, that's a pretty easy option. You can redraw and you don't need to get any approval. So that's definitely being used. But if people are at their limit of their home loan, it wouldn't be common for them to get an increase on their home loan for energy equipment. What we see is they tend to look at the options that are available at the point of sale, and they're things like buy now, pay later and loans. So we think that they're the biggest uptake of credit products that are used for people purchasing energy equipment. People definitely have credit cards, but what we see is people use credit cards for discretionary purchases and everyday purchases, things like groceries and paying for petrol, but they don't use them for purchases that are $10,000 to $20,000. For those types of purchases, they'd use something that has a fixed term, something that gives them a weekly or a fortnightly repayment. They're definitely looking at the cost of the interest, the fees, and then they're looking at the friction that it effectively takes for them to be able to get that, to access that product.
And what are typical interest rates for all the various products?
I think it's really hard to compare. I think it's best to look at repayments effectively for the same terms. And so I think you should look at, if you've got a 5-year product, and what would the repayment be with each of the different providers with the same term, because some, you can use a comparison rate. We have a 0% interest product. Others have interest-bearing products. Some of them may be marketed as a low-interest product that are 3-4%, but they have other fees that are attached. So, the best advice that I would give is just get a 5-year term, get everyone to give you a fortnightly repayment on a 5-year term, and then just make a comparison of what those repayments are and look at what's the best for you.
Great. Can I ask you a question now? I'm going to take you out of finance talk for a moment, because one thing that we ask everyone, which is such a good question, can you tell me a little bit about your electrification position now? What have you got? What do you use? Where are you at?
So, Fiona, we moved house a year and a half ago. So we're living in the inner city at the moment, in Sydney, and the house, my family home for 20 years, is what started the journey, and so that's where we had solar. I actually had tried 3 different batteries there over a period of 5 years. I tried LG Chem, Trina Power Best, and then I went with Tesla, and so that was largely an electric home. We have an EV, so we had the charger. And then we moved from there a year and a half ago into a very, very old terrace in the city, and we're just renovating this at the moment. So this is not a good house to look at. We're just early in the journey, but we are very fortunate to have a farm that's not far from Saul's house. And we bought that 4 or 5 years ago, and that farm is fully off-grid. So that is a tractor shed that we've converted to a house, and it has about 6.6 kilowatts of solar. We live on one Tesla Powerwall. There is no power line, so there is no backup. When you wake up in the morning and you've run out of energy, every hour the battery tries to re-click if there's enough sun. So you run out of, it's like range anxiety. And then off the water as well. So it's septic. We have rain tank, spring water. It's fully off grid. So the interesting thing is with this house, something that I was really surprised about was we put floor heating in. We did concrete floors.
Oh, yeah.
And what I found that I would do again is we just put floor heating in one of the areas of the home. But when the battery's full and you're not powering anything during the day, you can't feed it into the grid. It's actually great to just like heat up that floor.
Big thermal battery.
Because it's this huge thermal mass. Yeah. And so it is the cheapest way to get heating in a home. I've now learned. And so as we build extensions, that's going to be the cheapest thing I'm going to do is just put sporadic inserts of underfloor electric coils and just, keep that thing heated. So that was a personal learning.
I'm actually going to refit our house with underfloor heating a different way, but using a water coil under the floor and a heat pump. And just because, again, it's the cheapest, most comfortable way to heat a home. If you've got these sort of periods of low-cost electricity, which Australia has in spades. I love that idea. I also will attest that Katherine has delivered me an all-electric, zero-emission, organic squash when she dropped the squash by my house on her way back to Sydney from a farmhouse in her Tesla. It was the best tasting squash I've ever eaten. It was almost tasted smug.
Yeah. It's just quite amazing, I think, not being connected to the grid. Like, it's quite amazing that it feels like you're in a frontier in the wild, wild west and you're just all alone, even though we're only a couple of kilometres.
Pretty comfortable electric heated floor, Wild West.
But it's just like there is no backup. Like, when the water runs out or the electricity runs out, like, it is candles territory. So, but it is interesting how in touch you get with the weather, with the capacity that you have of energy, how you live totally differently within your means. You're not wasteful. And I find when we're there as a family, just our mindfulness is so different to when we're here and we're just connected to the grid, and you just use as much as you want, whenever you want, and you're just not thoughtful. And I just think the mindfulness that you have is so much better when you're engaged with, with the environment around you.
So is Australia going to solve climate change mindfully, or are we just going to solve it with abundance?
I think that the journey for households starts with getting solar. And for some reason, this idea gets in their head, whether it's a friend tells them, I got solar, or they saw an ad, or they saw a special saving that's about to run out. Something sparks their interest. But it's usually the first time when they speak to a solar retailer and they say, pick up your energy bill and tell me your NMI. Now, what's this number on your bill? What's the supply charge? What's this? And I think it's the first time most people genuinely pay attention to their energy bill, other than that amount of money that they owe. Or people look at the water bill, how much do I use? There's 16 people living in my home, with the amount of water that we're all using, or what have you. So I think, just to your point, I think when you get solar, it starts this mindfulness journey. But then once they start getting it, they start to change their lifestyles, their habits. And then you realize, actually, you don't need to use as much, and you have quite an abundant supply. And I think it's going to be a combination of both, actually. I think it's just what happens when you start on this journey.
It made me wonder, you're off-grid. At the farm, you said you have one Tesla Powerwall out there. Have you thought, oh, maybe we'll get two, or do you feel happy with the capacity? Just you talk about the difference between the two.
Well, it's a Tesla Powerwall 2, and they've now got the Powerwall 3 in stock. So just before the battery subsidy came in, I was ringing up the solar distribution, Solar Juice, and Harry Charmy and others, and just saying, have you got a Powerwall 2 for me? And just save it, because apparently the Powerwall 3 doesn't connect to the Powerwall 2. So I don't know if he still saved my Powerwall 2. So I do need two more, ideally.
I don't know. I think having the kids understand, an energy budget, at least on weekends, that's pretty good discipline.
When it rains, as you've been experiencing, Saul, we're going through a wet patch at the moment, and that sun doesn't peek through.
Literally today, yeah.
Yeah. So when you have 2 days of rain and little bits of sun, a second battery would be nice to stream Manly Sea Eagles or something. Yeah, the NRL.
Australian households spend between 2 and 10% of their incomes on energy. Wealthier households spend 2%. Less wealthy households spend 10%. So it depends where you are on the socioeconomic ladder. I often wonder, is this a lot to people or a little? Probably for the wealthiest households, the savings they can make on energy don't really matter. To the lower income households, it really does matter. Can you put those numbers in the context of larger Australian energy expenditure, and maybe even how do people yet think about the petrol and the gas purchases in the same way they think about electricity? Can they think about all at once and translate?
I don't think I've got all the answers, but I'll give you some kind of insights.
Anecdotes is what we run on here at the Shameless plug.
So I've just got a stat. It says households are now spending about 48% of their household income on mortgage repayments.
Wow.
And a more recent figure suggests that this has climbed up to about 50.3% from, and it used to be at about 29%. So I think if you're saying it's around 10%, a bit less for some who are not as wealthy, maybe a bit more. It's interesting that mortgages are such a bigger component, and I think that's why every small movement in interest rates has a big consequence for households' affordability. So I think mortgages have the biggest consequence on household affordability and budget. But once you've been squeezed, moving from 29% to 50% of your budget on a mortgage, after that, everything is painful. And so if your utility bill is about 10% of your household budget, anything, that goes up every year, it all hurts. And I think it's just this sense of, they're being told that it's going up. The ones that have solar, it doesn't make sense why they're putting solar in the grid and not getting paid for this solar the same rate that they're paying for their energy. So I think there's this whole fairness piece. And so, people don't feel it's a fair deal, I think, and they don't like this part of their bill going up.
Well, just to go a little bit deeper on that fairness, so a lot of Australian households are only getting 1 or 2 cents for solar they sell into the grid, and they pay 30 or 40 cents for what they buy from the grid. It appears that the electricity market and the regulation surrounding this is moving at a snail's pace. It's not getting to where we need to go as fast as Australians are investing. If you, give us 5 recommendations, Katherine's perfect regulatory and policy environment to fix these problems in favour of the household. You can get as political as you want. Go on.
Yeah, it's magic one time.
So I think the household battery subsidy one. I think that households needed to move to storage and away from solar. So I think even a redistribution of benefit from solar, I think, might. We've got the solar SRES or STC scheme ending in 2030. I don't like to create change. We know it's 2030, but I think it'd have greater benefit if you potentially reduce that and gave it to people buying batteries. I think that's going to have a bigger benefit. And I think that the amount that is going towards that battery subsidy should continue to be reassessed, and we should continue to reassess where other distributions of capital are going from a government perspective, and continue to look at should more go to households. So I think that's something that should be a watching brief and continually reassessed. The second thing is from a financial perspective, you look at the design of a credit product and the distribution of the credit product. I think that there's a bit of work that we need to do as far as the sales agent of energy equipment. So there is regulation in the industry as far as installers of batteries and solar. You've got to have the right licensing. You've got to have the right training. The equipment, you've got to have the right product and the approvals and the right registrations. Same as the businesses, you've got to have the right accreditation if you're the director of a business. But the parties that sell the equipment, there is no registration or licensing regime on them. And that's
so you're the shonkiest piece of our system is now the sellers of the finance. Is that what you're saying?
It's actually not the finance. It's actually, I'd say it extends to the sellers of the equipment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Catherine, I'd love you to dive deeper one more time in the plainest kitchen table language you can give us. How should we think as everyday Australians about the payback period or the effect of cash flow of making these electric investments?
Firstly, people look at the sticker price of what they want to buy. Say it's $10,000. And so then their first thing is, how am I going to afford the $10,000? And so the second thing they then, when they look at finance, how they navigate the price of $10,000, the first thing they try to avoid is paying anything up front. So then they don't have to use any of their cash that they've got saved for something. So they want to remove the upfront price. And then the second thing they think is, okay, so how do I pay for that over time? And so how they think about paying for this over time is they think about, what's the cash flow I'm going to use to make the repayments over time? The great thing is when you buy something like solar, you will be generating part of your energy, and that will displace part of the energy in your bill that someone else is generating and you're paying for. So there's an avoided cost. And so the cost of your energy bill goes down. And what you try and do is try and match the reduction in your energy bill per month and try and align that with the price of how much you're going to pay in your finance repayments. And so that's what your tradie will do. That's what Brighte does. We have calculators to help you do this. And it really depends on a few factors. It depends on how much your energy bill is, how much the price of the system is you're wanting to buy, and do you want to make money from day one, or do you just want to match your savings? And what that choice is how long your finance term is going to be. Do you want to do a 5-year term, and then you can effectively, have more money that you're saving from your energy bill, as opposed to how much you're paying out in your finance repayments? Or do you want to get a 3-year term and match effectively how much you're saving, and then pass that all on to Brighte for your finance repayments? And so that's how people think about the cash flow or payback in buying energy equipment.
I quite like the idea of I'll pay it back as fast as I can, and then after that I'm going to have free energy. And I've heard a few people think of it like that. So that's where you front load the costs and you scrimp and save while you're doing it, and then you're golden later.
Yeah, and I think people with families and kids, and I think they try and make a bit of money along the way, so they can pay for a pizza once a week, or have a bit of fun along the way. And other people who are potentially closer to retirement say, let's try and just get this out of the way, front load it, so then and then it's free energy. So I think lifestyle,
dictates the outcome.
Lifestyle decisions, but there is choice is the good thing.
Catherine, thanks a ton for being on the Shameless Plug. Good luck with your journey electrifying Australian households. Thanks for your pioneering work in electrification finance.
Thanks so much, Saul. Thank you. And thanks so much, Fiona. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. It's lovely to meet you.
The Shameless Plug is a podcast supported by Rewiring Australia and Rewiring America. It's hosted by me, Saul Griffith, and my mate, Fiona Whitelaw. Our producers are Kathleen Burrows and Caitlin Chang. You can read more about today's guest in my latest book, Plug In, The Electrification Handbook, available in all good bookstores. Rewiring Australia and Rewiring America advocate for climate action you can do today in your home and your community. Let's electrify everything.